Hey everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to explore agent flows, a key part of the tools component in Copilot Studio. If you want your agent to go beyond answering questions or executing simple actions and instead handle more complex multi-step processes, agent flows are the way to go. Let's dive in and see how it works. So, what are agent flows? Agent flows are visual, step-by-step automations that your agent can trigger when a user asks for something. They are built in Power Automate and are perfect for handling multi-step processes like registering a new employee, submitting a request, or sending an approval email. And you can trigger a flow in few different ways. When the agent calls it directly during a conversation, or based on background events like when a new SharePoint item is created, or a form is submitted. Now, when should you use a connector and when should you build your agent flow? If you just need your agent to perform a simple action like getting someone's calendar, sending an email, or fetching a record, that's where connectors shine. They are fast, lightweight, and great for direct interactions with external systems. But when your use case involves multiple steps, conditions, logic, or approvals like checking data, creating multiple records, or sending notifications, then you'll want to build an agent flow. In the next part of the video, I will show you how to create a simple agent flow and call it from a topic, so you can see it in action. So let's jump into the demo. Okay, now let's explore how to create agent flows in Copilot Studio. There are different ways in which we can create an agent flow. We can do that from the flows section, or we can do that directly through our agent in the tools section. So if I click add tool, we will see that this will open again this window that includes the different connectors, but I can also create a new tool. And from here, there are different ways in which I can add a new tool. One of them is agent flow. So I will create a new agent flow. This will open the designer view. And for those who are familiar with Power Automate, you will see that this user interface is very similar to what we have in Power Automate. In this particular case, this agent flow will be executed when an agent calls the flow. So basically, we will add this particular agent flow as a tool to my existing agent. The next step will be to configure some relevant information, including the agent name. So the benefit of creating an agent flow is that in a single flow, we can execute multiple actions. So this is a better approach than just adding individual actions as we did before in previous videos, because here we have more control over the steps we want to execute for more complex scenarios. So let's say that I want to actually let me save this agent as a draft, because the first thing I want to do is I want to edit the name of my flow and I want to make some changes. So let me go back to overview. As you can see, the agent has no name now, but I will update it. So I need to provide the name and the description. So let me start by adding the flow term, and then I'm gonna add a new employee. This is the name of my flow. This agent flow will be used to add new employees to the new hire list. I'm gonna save these details, and then I'm gonna go back to the designer view. If I still don't see the name, I can just refresh. Yep, and now we see the new name of our agent. Okay, the second thing that we need to do is we need to configure our trigger. So in this particular case, this flow will be executed through the agent. So when I click here, I have the option to add input parameter, input property. So if I click that, I have different options here. I can add a text, a yes, no field, a file, email, number, and date. And since we will use this flow to register a new hire, I will add the different properties that needs to be added to that needs to be provided to register a new employee. So let's add the full name, the email address, the department. Let's add the role as well, the manager name, and the manager email. And one more important thing is to provide a description of each of these input properties, because since this agent flow will be invoked through our agent, it will get the description and the details of the input parameters to determine what to ask to the end user. So I have some descriptions here. I will quickly just copy and paste the text. Again, you should provide as much detail as you can in the description. And with that, we are ready. And let's save by now our agent. So the next step is to execute an action. To do that, I will look into available actions. This is a list of connectors available that Power Platform offers. So I will use a create item action from SharePoint. And I'm going to configure my actions in a similar way like I did before in previous videos when we added our first SharePoint action. I'm going to select the SharePoint site, the SharePoint list, in this case is a new hire list. And then in the parameters, we will see the different fields that are part of my SharePoint list. And for each of those fields, we will basically provide the input parameters. So for the title, it's going to be the full name, the email address, the role, the department, the manager name, and the manager email. And then let's change the name. This is going to be create a new employee record. So it's important also to provide a description. This is to make it easier for anyone working on this agent to basically understand the purpose of this action. Okay, then we will add more actions here, but just test this part of the flow to make sure that it's working as expected. So I'm just first, in order to test this functionality, first I need to publish the agent flow. Then I'm gonna click on test. I'm gonna test this manually, and I'm gonna provide some input values here, just to confirm if this is working as expected. So full name, let's say, is gonna be Marcus Hendrik, Marcus H. Let's select a department, engineering, and this is this side. Manager name, this is gonna be me, and I'm gonna run the flow. Okay. And we can see that the flow has successfully been executed. So we can review the input information provided. If we click on show raw outputs, we will see the information that has been provided by me. And then we can see that this information has been successfully sent to the SharePoint action. And we can of course see that the item has been successfully created. If we want to review if this works successfully, we can just go to the list, refresh the list, and see that this item has successfully been created. So this is working as expected. Now let's continue configuring our agent. Again, I'm gonna click on edit. So since I have more control over what I can execute here, I'm gonna add an additional action. In this case, let's say that I want to send an email. So I'm gonna send an email, and I will use this Outlook action. And then I'm going to configure this email. So let's say that I'm going to send an email to the manager. Send an email. I'm going to change the name, saying confirmation email to manager. So in the to section, I'm going to configure the value. To do that, I'm going to use dynamic content. And remember, I'm providing the manager email as an input parameter. So I'm going to select that from here. That's the manager email. In the subject, I'm going to write new employee registered, and I'm gonna add the name of the employee. In this case, this is a parameter. This is the full name. Actually, instead of using this, if you can see here in the create a new employee record, we have these fields. And this basically contains the information that has been registered. So in this case, what I'm gonna do is, instead of using the input values, I'm gonna use the values from the record that I have created in a SharePoint list. So for example, in this case, the title has the name of the employee. So I'm gonna select that value. And then I'm gonna, for example, write the body of the email. So hello, I'm gonna put the manager name here. And then the text, your new hire, I'm gonna select the name of the employee, has been successfully registered. And here are the details. And here I can add some additional details, like, for example, let's say the department, the role, and in a similar way, from the SharePoint list, I can select the department, the role. Let's put some formatting to this text. And finally, let me copy a text that I already have here. Perfect. So we already have added the second action, which is to send an email, save draft. Perfect. Let's test this again, but instead of adding the values manually again, I'm gonna use I'm gonna select automatically, and I'm gonna use information from a previous execution. So I'm going to publish and test, and we can confirm that the execution has been successful. Again, if I click here, I can see more details of the email, right? This is like the JSON format of the details of the email that I can explore if I want. But I can also verify if I have received the email successfully. And actually, this is the email that we have received with all the details. And I can, of course, customize this email further if I want. But with that, we are basically showing that this works as expected. Now let's do one more thing. Let me go back to the edit mode, and I'm gonna add one more action. Let's say that after sending an email, I want to send a notification to the HR department about this new hire, and they already have a Teams channel where they receive new notifications from different parts of the organization. So in this case, I'm gonna use a Teams action. So let me search Teams, and you see that there are different actions, different connectors related to Teams. In this case, I'm gonna click on See More. There are multiple actions that we can use and we can test, but I'm looking for one in particular, which is to post a message in a chat or chat. So I'm gonna select this one, and here we have the option to configure who is gonna send the notification. This could be the bot, the agent basically, or this could be a user. We are gonna keep this as flow bot. Then where are we gonna post this message? This could be a channel, a group chat, a chat with Flowbot. Let's select channel because I already have a channel that I want to use. Then let's select the team ID. In this case, my team is gonna be HR and people operations. And then I have created a channel, and this channel is for new hire. And with that, I'm gonna create a similar message. In this case, actually, let me try to copy a text that I already have a separate place, and just need to update basically these properties. So I'm gonna put new hire, and then similarly, like in the previous case, I'm gonna add the records. For example, in a SharePoint list, every time you create a record, there is an ID. It's a unique identifier. So I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna add that to make it easier to identify. Then, for example, I'm gonna insert the full name, which is stored in the title. I'm going to insert the email address, the department, the role, and finally the manager name. Perfect. And I can even, if I want, insert a link. See the record here. Let's try to see what happened. So if I want to see more fields, I just need to click here. And there is one particular internal field from this action, which is the link to item. Yes, this is the one, link to item. So when I click here, this will basically insert a direct link to this item in SharePoint. So I think with that, I have everything that I need. Maybe I'm gonna change this post, new hire message. That's it. I'm going to save, publish, perfect, and then I'm gonna test. This time I'm gonna test with the records that I previously registered, because I just wanna test not the full flow, but basically if this latest action is working as expected. So it has been executed. We can see that all the actions has been executed successfully. We can confirm that we have received the email for this record. And if we go to the SharePoint, to the Teams channel, we see that this record has been registered successfully. So we have all the details here. And we can even have the link to the SharePoint item. Of course, we can customize these. We can use HTML to provide the correct formatting. So it will be much easier for someone just to click on that record and open the record and delete. But by now, it seems like it's working as expected. Okay, now, how do we use this agent float in our agent? To do that, let's go back to the agents. Let's access our agent, and let's go to tools. Remember that in our tools, we already have an action to register a new employee. So to avoid any issues, we are going to disable this action. Also remember that we have a topic to register or to create new employees in a similar way. We will use that later, but by now, to avoid any potential issues, we are going to disable that particular topic. Now, and we can click on publish just to make sure that the changes has been saved. Perfect. And now let's go again to tools and add a tool. And if we go this time to the flow category, we will see that there are several different flows that available here. These are flows that I have previously created, are available in my environment and can be used by multiple agents. But we recently created the add a new employee agent flow. So if I click here, I can add and configure. So the experience is very similar to the way we did previously with different actions. This is going to act as a new action or a new tool. So in a similar way, we need to update the flow, the name, the description, and the parameters. In this case, it's important to provide again a relevant description. Use this agent flow to register new hires. It's better if I provide trigger phrases similar to what we do when creating topics, right? The descriptions are always important, but in this case, we're gonna do a very basic configuration. In this case, we will keep this option selected because we will use this as an action of my flow. You see by default all of these fields has been configured. These are the input parameters available on my flow. I'm just going to configure manually the values of the manager name and the manager email in a similar way to what I did when I created the SharePoint action. But in this case, if you remember, if I search for a user, I'm gonna add the plain name, and in the email is gonna be user email. So the configuration is very similar. And if we go to and we click customize, we will see the description we provided when creating the agent flow. If you remember, when adding the input parameters or input attributes to my trigger action, we provided a description. This is the same description that is available here, so we don't need to basically replace this description. We can just reuse the description that we provided, or we can improve it if we want, providing some examples. So it looks like this is working as expected. Now, since we already have our agent flow added to our list of tools, we are ready to test this agent flow. So let me ask register a new employee or a new hire. And the agent will determine that the most appropriate action or tool to use is our agent flow to add a new employee. By default, it has captured the manager name and manager email, and then it's asking me for the rest of the parameters. For example, what is the department of my new hire? This is gonna be engineering. What is the let's say the email? This is gonna be, for example, Peter M. What's the role? It's gonna be a software engineer. And what's the name? Is Peter. And my record has been successfully registered. I have received a notification. I can verify that I have provided all the information successfully and the agent has executed the steps successfully. And I can verify that by accessing my SharePoint list. If I go here and update this list, we will see that a record has been created successfully. We can also see that we have received a new notification by email, and we can also verify that we have received a notification in that Teams channel, as we can see here. Now, this is one way to use the agent flow as a tool integrated into my agent. But I can also configure that agent flow and invoke that agent flow through a topic. So for example, in this case, the first thing we need to do in order to use or invoke this agent flow through my topic is to access my agent flow and change the value here. I'm gonna uncheck this option because I'm gonna invoke this flow through my topic. So I'm gonna save this. And if you remember, in a previous video, we created a topic to create a new hire. We are gonna enable this topic again. We are gonna come back here. We have the questions here, but what we will do is we will add this tool into this conversational flow. So I'm gonna click on add a tool, select tool, and select our flow, add new employee. The next step is gonna be to configure the different properties. So I'm gonna select the first property. If you remember, this value is the full name. So I'm gonna select the variable that contains the full name of the employee. Then I'm gonna select the second property, which is the email. The third property is the department. So I'm gonna provide the information through the department variable. And finally, the role. And there is a variable that stores the role. With that, I'm gonna save. Okay, I have saved my topic. And finally, I'm gonna add an action here to send a message. And I'm gonna say your new hire. I'm gonna select the variable full name has successfully being registered. Congratulations. That's it. I'm gonna save, and then I'm gonna test this topic. So again, let me send the prompt, register a new hire. This time the agent is using the topic instead of the agent flow directly. So what's the name of the employee? The name is, let's say, Carlos Ramirez. Email address from the engineering team is an analyst. Now it's processing and is using my topic. Basically, if you remember, I created this message. So the flow is working as expected. Now you will say, why shouldn't I use just the agent flow versus using a topic? Again, the topic will provide or will give you more control over what you want to use. Actually, the agent flow has a lot of control on the steps and the actions to execute. But if you want to manage, for example, the way you would like to provide a response, for example, if we go back to the topic, here we have more flexibility because, for example, here instead of just providing a simple message, I can even configure an adaptive card. And with an adaptive card, I can provide a more personalized look and feel or more personalized response. Or I can add images, videos, I can add message variations. So we have a potential here. We can even, after executing that, maybe we can ask another question and then invoke a topic. So basically the main difference is that if you use a topic and you invoke an agent flow through your topic, you will have even additional control over the conversational flow. Now let me do a variation of the same topic. We will do an improvement to this topic this time. To do that, let's go back to topics. In this case, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate this topic. So I'm gonna click here and make a copy. So this has created a copy of this topic. Let me save. I'm gonna go back to the topic section. I'm gonna disable my previous topic and I'm gonna use the new copy. And in this case, I'm just gonna replace the name here. I'm gonna put version 2. Okay, so I'm gonna do an improvement to the way we are using or we are creating top. Previously, we used the questions action to basically provide to basically ask the user to provide an answer. However, topics also have a functionality here that it's if you go to basically details, you will see that you can configure input variables and output variables. The input variables basically will allow me to define what information will be asked by the agent when someone invokes this particular topic. So instead of me having to ask the questions manually or add the questions manually, the topic and the agent with the orchestrator will ask the question for me, will generate those questions for me based on the information that I'm providing in the variable. So how do I do that? So first, just to avoid any issues, let me first remove these input values from my action. Then let's remove the existing questions. Perfect. And finally, okay, let's save. We are getting some errors. This is because we are using some variables here. So by now, let's remove this action as well. Perfect. And let's save. So let's go back to details. And in input, we are going to create the variables that we will use here. So our variables again are going to be the input information we are going to be asking to the user. For example, it's going to be var new hire name. This is string. This is the new hire name. Here we can configure to identify this as a person name. Then let's create another variable. This is going to be the new hire email. And here we can put this is the new hire email address. We can put the example com. This is an email, so we will identify this as an email address. And then we can add another variable here to specify the department. This is just a string, so this is the department for the new employee. Example, engineering operations, IT support. And let's add one more. This is gonna be the role, new hire role. And let's put this is the role of the new hire. An example, this could be software engineer, analyst, designer, data scientist. Perfect. I'm gonna save this. And from here, I can configure the input values. Okay, so now I will configure the input parameters again. In this case, it's gonna be the name of the employee, the email, the department, and the role. I'm gonna save the changes and let me again just add the message here, employee with email address has been successfully registered. Okay, let's save and let's text our agent again. So register a new employee. This will execute the topic. This is the version 2 of our topic. And you will notice that I have not configured the questions actions, but instead I configured the input variables. And since I provided a description of each of those input variables, then Copilot Studio is automatically generating the questions for me. So what's the name of the new hire? In this case, is let's say Maria Sanchez. What is the role of the new hire? And it's providing me some examples based on the description that I provided. Let's say that she's a data scientist. What's the role? It's gonna be, well, what's the department? It's gonna be on the engineering department, and the email, so maria.com, and it has successfully executed the flow, provided a response as expected. So basically, this is a different way of configuring my topic. It's a best practice. If you can configure the input variables instead of having to create manually each of the questions, then it's better, because in that way you will spend less time configuring and maintaining topics. And that's how agent flows unlock the power of automation, helping your agent take real action and drive meaningful results. In the next video, we will explore prompts and how they can make your agent smarter, more helpful, and even creative using generative AI. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. I would love to hear what kind of action you're building into your flows. See you in the next one.